Patrick Johnston of the Province and Post Media joins us on Thursdays, and we're coming off a 4-3 overtime loss for the Vancouver Canucks to the St. Louis Blues, including the coach saying, "Hey, Elias Pettersson, you got to be better." Hey, Peach, how we doing?
Good morning.
Mhm.
Yeah, Farhan had asked, "Do you think he didn't play that great?" And Rick goes, "Nope, ended quite tersely." And I'm like,
Don't hand this off to Farhan.
No,
This
you had
was
a-
you.
No.
follow-up
Mike
question.
comes to me, and like, well, I guess I better ask the follow-up.
That a boy.
What could he do better?
Mm-hmm. What did you make of the answer? And are you okay with Tocchet criticizing PD publicly, especially
In
given
this
what's
moment.
going on,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
You know, it's not exactly benign times with that player.
It was funny. You listen back, and I think Rob Williams made this point. You live, it didn't quite sound the way it reads. And I went back and listened, and I went, "What is Rick saying here?" I mean, I wrote the story because he said it, and definitely, like the fight. You go back and you look like people scoring, right? But I think this is one of those ones where it's what else are you doing, and I think certainly in that game, and Rick was asked later about the forecheck and decided to make it a commentary on basically what he hates, which is east-west play, which went on a long description without naming anybody. It was quite clearly thinking of the Andrei Kuzmenko turnover in the first period up by the blue line, where he just tried to do too much. Just rim the puck around. Don't try to force it. Ends up being a 2-on-1 the other way. No, to Kuzmenko's credit, back checks, ends up actually blocking the shot with his butt, ends up saving the day in the scramble on the crease, but that all doesn't happen if you just rim it. And I think there were a couple other instances in the game of sort of puck management. Pettersson maybe trying to do a little too much. And, so there was that. He's just saying, listen, like I guess we can see, he's playing on that line. He wants that line to play fast. And that line wasn't playing fast. Kuzmenko had, I think, 8 shot attempts. PD had 8 shot attempts. But just the way they were playing, he wasn't pleased with. And I think there was a lot of things there. I think he looks at Kuzmenko, who hasn't scored since before Christmas, who is, I think, trying things, but they obviously need a lot more. And I think he looks at the center and saying, "You go fix this guy, and I'm not seeing enough. Don't play like him." That was kind of where I ended up on that. Was his overall point was, "You're better than this. Get back to what you are. I know you're scoring, but we need a lot more from you right now."
What do you make? And you can't go there often as a head coach with the star player. You got to pick your spots. Yeah. But once again, I think this head coach has shown great awareness in terms of picking the spot. It wasn't the first game that he struggled, right? It's been several. And I thought we call it criticism, but he certainly wasn't throwing haymakers there or anything like that, right? Like they were more jabs. And he's got so much equity. He's got so much buy-in, Patrick, that I think he probably feel like this is about as good a spot as in terms of empowerment of my system and everything we've been preaching to be able to say it. And guys, we're all old enough to remember that Alain Vigneault from time to time would say the same thing about Henrik and Daniel. They've got to skate more. They got to move their feet.
Oh, Ryan Kessler.
Remember, why do you like Burroughs on that line? Because he gets them playing with pace, right? So honestly, I thought it was another masterclass.
But there is noise around this team, Peach, for the first time in a long time. And is it because the All-Star break's coming up and he thinks that it'll die down enough but he wants to send some messages between the Kuzmenko shenanigans, Zadorov's benching, and then this is the first time and I don't call the contract stuff noise. I'm talking about on-ice stuff. There's on-ice noise now for the first time this season.
It's a great point, Blake.
Yeah, and you break the 3 different things there. I mean, first of all, the star player thing that Matt mentioned, and you can only do it so often. Interestingly enough, and I'm writing a story, it'll be out, I think, today. I had a great one-on-one with Tocchet the other day. And one of the things he mentioned, we covered a lot of topics. One of the things that came up was essentially what does Wayne Gretzky help? How does Wayne Gretzky help him be a better coach? Because, Wayne didn't have a great run as a coach. There is that notion that the greats can't explain it because they can just do it. But I sort of said, what is Wayne? Tell me about that. What does he bring? He said he helps me understand how to talk to star players. And he says there are things that would have been said to Wayne. He got Wayne's. I mean, I think everyone knows Wayne is a famous storyteller. There's a reason why, not just because he's the greatest player of all time, but he's had success as an after dinner speaker, so on and so on and so on. He has these little anecdotes, and one of those was because coaches along the way would give him ideas, give him thoughts. Wayne was obviously a very self-driven person, very on point. He wasn't successful without having driven himself to where he was, but you still need people from above, from outside telling you these things. So that was one thing for sure. Move your feet. I mean, that was play fast. I mean, that is exactly what he said. He said at the end of the day, PD's great when he makes those moves, when he's moving fast. That's literally what he said. So that, that was the other item in that, is that get yourself going forward, drive the net. More things happen. You are a best player when you drive the net. All these things happen. Get back to that, and then the timing of it. Like, absolutely, that's something that Tocchet mentioned to us the other day. Was just the fact that they've got one more game. Obviously, it's like this break's really important. They're 8-0-2 or whatever it is in their last 10. Like, this team has been succeeding. But he also recognizes that they're in that precarious position where he doesn't want them to slip mentally, to get comfortable. And I think they know, but his job is to keep pressing that point, which is that we have to keep pushing hard, because that's the challenge now. It's not, they're going to make the playoffs. They would love to finish first in the conference, right? Like, you want to be top of the pile, right? But the real challenge is maintaining your mental focus so that you don't run the risk of peaking too early. That you are go when the playoffs come.
That top seed is the only team that's going to get any semblance of advantage, I think. Because I think that second wild card team will be the only team that is not that scary. And it's not to say it's impossible, but that first wild card team will be a good team. That's I would be dangling that carrot in front of my players if I'm Rick Tocchet.
Yeah, exactly. And he's got, they've achieved, right? They're feeling good. There's a bunch of them going to the All-Star game. They're proud of what they're doing, but they're going to be off for a week. Like, that's the other thing. It's just, how do you,
how much
it's
rest?
not even
exactly it.
They're off for a week. How do you keep whatever you have?
Right.
You come back, physically this is going to be great for them, but mentally, they're going to come back, and they've got a bit of a tough road trip. They come back, and they want to keep the ball rolling. And Edmonton's going to have won 100 games in a row by the time they come back, right? Like that there's stuff happening around them that they do need to pay attention to.
Yeah, and these again, I think it's calculated. You're going to be away from me for a week. I want you thinking about certain things. I would not be surprised to hear Tocchet do more messaging in the practices, pre and post games that are remaining. I guess just the Saturday Columbus.
Yeah.
Prior to the break. And the other thing is, and we know Elias can be a bit of a sensitive sort. If this is something that would affect extension negotiations, like if he's like, oh, the coach is calling me out publicly, I think we can all agree then, like, that's not a guy hard to say. Yeah. But I'm not sure you can win with that guy.
And you're not saying that about Pettersson. You're saying if that were the case.
Exactly. Yeah. If that were the case. Yeah. Moving on. And look, this is something I do think has a little bit more currency. Is the search for a top 6 forward or winger for Elias Pettersson? Is that now something, Patrick, that you're viewing through the prism of the extension? Like, did they have to get him a top 6 forward or a winger to sort of complete the pitch on the extension side of things?
A guy to grow old with.
Yeah, maybe. or at least to try to win a cup this year with.
That's it. I'm not sure they're going old together, but at the very least, you're going to give them the best chance for this season.
I could see that. I think you need to maintain what you've been trying to do, which is build a winner, right? That the work does not stop. You do not simply say, all right, that's it. We've baked the pie. Like, you got to keep building. You keep making changes. I mean, the easy one is to point to you look at that roster that first night that Tocchet coached a year ago, and there's 11 players gone from that roster, right? Like, that's the easy part. It's now saying, how did you make this roster better? And obviously they have made it better on the blue line, and they found guys like Pius, Suter, and Teddy Bluger who have been massively better players, and players have improved under the coach's watch. The relationship between coach and player is out, strong. Yeah, those are things that had to happen. But yeah, I could totally see that being, that they were able to get this guy to come play with me. That is a player I can play with. I'm excited to do that. Absolutely. I think that there's absolutely a case to be made that that's in their thinking and all this.
Let me ask you this then, since we're talking deadline. I'm not sure if you saw Saravelli's piece earlier in the week about Monahan is probably going to fetch a first from the Montreal Canadiens. What do you think about that for the Canucks? Straight up, Monahan for a first. This year's first.
I could see, if you could figure that out, sure. I guess I have sort of, I don't know if the word's anxieties, hesitations about Sean Monahan. Just how things went in Calgary. Like, clearly good player, but just the road was so bumpy the last couple of years there. And the Flames were trying to get rid of him. Treliving was trying to get rid of him. That just kind of sticks in the back of my head.
Yeah, and I think that's the reaction we saw from people, from our listeners on that they can't get that vision out of their heads.
One of the things that we didn't get as much into yesterday, though, Blake, and I'd like to throw it to PJ. We did talk about how Monahan, because the contract is less than $2 million, is a pure addition to the lineup without any need for subtraction, which a guy like Lindholm, which a guy like Gensel would probably require. Fellas, if the playoffs started today, Linus Karlsson would be your next forward up. And I know there's a deadline between now and then, and DiGiuseppe may get healthy and may prove useful as well. But would we be comfortable with Linus Karlsson and Phil DiGiuseppe as forwards 13 and 14 in
who will emphatically get used?
But here's the thing. If you're moving a Höglander, if you're moving a Kuzmenko, suddenly they bump up.
Yeah.
And now one of them is in your lineup. Again, barring trade line additions, I would think they'll get another depth forward. But, to me, that's part of the puzzle here as well. How can we add without subtracting? Because we're not exactly the deepest winger group to begin with.
Well, that's it. And listen, I think Karlsson's a bit of that, I think we talked about this, he's just a guy they know, I think at this point he's in the, he's a safe, easy call up in their dreams. I'm sure they wish it were Vasily Podkolzin because he's on an incredible hot streak, but it's turned into, again, a bumpy road after what looked like a really solid things happening. He's struggling to produce.
He's fine.
Yeah. You kind of come back to what does this team need? And I think I said last week, if you look at the history of what Jim Rutherford's done, is that he always goes and gets depth guys. Like, they're gonna score some depth forwards. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
They would have obviously liked to add a defenseman. I mean, Joe, Dhaliwal saying that they're still looking at Tanev, which makes sense, but I don't know how you make it work with the contract. But you're going to look for a depth forward for sure. But the fact remains that they need more near the top, not just because they need it, but because you're going to need depth at the top end of your lineup. I mean, you want to go back to 2011, that's the Michael Samuelsson lesson. That is a player that kind of gets forgotten about in that whole sort of why things didn't go right, but he got hurt. They managed to sort of withstand it to get into the final. But you imagine Michael Samuelsson on the 2011 team in the final, right? Like, that's why you get depth guys that can play at the top of the lineup as well.
Yeah. I got to say, I'm having trouble with Tanev just because they've stated their priority is the top six forward. I think that's clear to anybody who watches the team. They don't really have the cap space to make addition upon addition, not to mention expensive ones on defense, again, unless you're willing to subtract. And I'm not necessarily sure you're deep enough to subtract.
It would have to be Kuzmenko. You could add both, like Adam Henrique is your fourth line center, guys. Monahan is your second line accoutrement to Pettersson. I mean, both of those.
Even then, though, Blake, where you're moving out salary to make that happen.
What's in Henry?
Henrique's 5'8".
Is he really?
Yes. I mean, even if they
oh my god
keep 50% of it, he's a $2.9 million player, and Monahan's a 1 point
there.
I will, and here's the other thing I think people aren't necessarily thinking of. Like, obviously, Vegas is dealing with a bunch of injuries, but as it stands, they have $8 million in cap space, and they haven't even, like, Jack Eichel's just sitting on IR. Like, if they want to get really creative, if there's a team that can add stuff and run an incredible roster once the playoffs starts,
and has done it before.
Has done it before, right? Like that's the thing to remember in all this. This is the classic one. You know, nothing you do is in a vacuum, right? Like, that's what the Canucks are up against. And the Canucks don't really have any room. That they would have to get creative. They would have to figure out a way to move off Kuzmenko. You know, like I said last week, is there a magic injury that happens? You know, blah blah blah. But like
Susie stay on the sidelines,
But here you look, but like, you know, that's $2 million. Like,
no, I don't think
we're talking about 18. You know, they could add another Jack Eichel in Vegas if they really wanted to get creative. You know,
imagine.
One thing I'll note about Vegas, they're at 50 contracts now. Usually there's an easy fix there, but they are the one NHL team that is running the full maximum 50 contracts. Pius Suter, recency bias perhaps aside, do you like him better on the wing? Do you like him better at center ice?
Well, if he's not running in the Garland Joshua middle, he seems like a waste on the fourth line. I like him. I like him as a center. Yeah, I think he's a smart player. I like the way he plays in the middle of the ice. That said, he does seem to have a good fit with Miller and Besser. You know, Brock Besser talked a lot about how he gets in on the puck. And we asked Suter, and he said, well, I play with they're two creative players. I just, sort of in a sense of fight for your position and keep your stick on the ice. I think he is a good fit on that line for sure. Is he the fetcher you really need on that line? I'm not 100% certain about that, which again goes back to where would you really like to put him? But I think it makes sense. He is such a, pun intended, such a Swiss Army knife of a player. You know, you can put him where you need. He can do various things for you, and he can, he's always going to be there. He's ready to go. So he has come exactly as advertised. Like, he came in, he was an interesting player to learn about when they signed him, to look at the production, the way he played on two not very good teams. And the idea that he was a constant, I think it was like he played for teams that were not very good defensively, except when he was on the ice. They actually kind of were good. They could make things happen two-way when he was on the ice, and we're seeing it now. Like, that's the effect he's had. It was one of those ones where you're like, maybe more GMs around the league. I mean, I don't know if this was a stats pickup. Certainly the numbers, the analytics underneath were very good on him.
Why wasn't he signed earlier, though? Why was he
available? This is my point.
It's the squeezing out of the middle class in the National Hockey League, and that is yet another win for Canucks pro player personnel.
But he was being bandied about, like, he was not a secret on social media.
As he said, Blake, like he basically got tired. Like, he just the frustration got to him, and he signed a deal that I don't think he otherwise would have signed.
But he wasn't a secret. Like, everybody was talking about him. Like, hey, look at this guy's stats, and he's been on a 20-goal pace before in his career, and he just languished and languished. I mean, thank goodness the Canucks do have him on the extra year. He and Höglander are the only two full-timers in the bottom six that actually have an extra year on them for next year, because you're not gonna have to pay a tax on them for the following season.
I mean, essentially, if you look at it, I mean, he's at least a $3.2 million hockey player, even coming off last year, and they've got that spread over 2 years. Like that, Matt's exactly right. Like, this type of player has been squeezed by the league, but by the salary structure, and maybe in a different universe, he is playing in the KHL, but here we are. The Canucks benefit, and the Canucks are winning because of it.
We should probably change that to was being squeezed, because with the salary cap increase, this summer, I think we're going to get back to a world where we're vastly overpaying for third pair defensemen and third line centers. That would be par for the course.
It's not going up $10 million.
NHL. Well, okay, over the next couple of years, you watch what very mediocre. Bottom
there's
six
there's going to be more room for mistakes. Absolutely,
for sure, and they can't wait to make them. Page that has been their MO.
Yeah.
The union may have been, taking their losses, agreed to flat salary caps and all of that, but the one thing they still got going for them is dumb GMs and owners who just can't help themselves. On July 1st. You were so wise. That was so good today.
Thank you.
Very professorial. Professor Peach here on Thursdays with Sakaris.
And two friends of the show front and center on the post-game news conference too, with Farhan and
that's the way it should work. Yeah. Hey, he had his question, but after they got an answer like that from Tocchet, he pivots and he asks the follow-up question and he gets
veteran move. Yes.
That's
I asked my question in my head. It kind of saved me because I had a question about Pius Suter, which I ended up asking.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't really sure, because the way they do, you did pass them, you get the two questions. It's like, anyway, you can get more later if you want, but you kind of got to go ready. You got to have, okay, these are the two things. And I wasn't really sure what my second item was going to be. And then there we go.
There you go. Well, you not only did well by yourself, you helped the entire media corps as you do with this show every Thursday.
Well, and so did Kevin Woodley, getting those great quotes off Drew Bannister about players staying on their feet.
Yes.
It's hard to play when you're not on your feet.
Yeah, it was a good night. It was a good night for good night on our.
It was a good night for the media. Yeah, absolutely. Hey everybody! If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sakaris and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.